back to another episode of the Cutting Room Floor. I'm Larry, and I'm joined today by Pastor Wes.
Good to see everybody.
Hey, it's good to be back together. Sounds like we've had some sound issues the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thomas is back now. We think we've got that figured out.
Right.
Thank you, Thomas. We love you, Thomas.
Amateur hour has ended. Yes.
Yes, it has.
We should not be in charge of sound.
Yes, it was. No, we can't do that. So we were in part 3 of our message series, Beyond Belief, this week, which has just been awesome. This looking at unlikely people experiencing unlikely grace from Jesus. It's just kind of, for me anyway, it's been this perfect series for Lent. Just thinking about grace in my own life and what that means. I take that look inward with Lent, like to think about Nicodemus and the times that we feel like we have it all figured out, but then there's just that nagging question in there, and the Gerasene demoniac, and that, what a wild story.
Yeah.
That was. You started this week with kind of a wild story with Lawn Chair Larry.
Lawn Chair Larry, yes. Amateur pilot.
From one Larry to another, he's the real deal.
Yeah. 42 helium balloons, and he took flight. So
that's insane. Not as beyond belief, maybe, as the story we got into in the scripture. One of the things you said up front before we get to the scripture is you said desperation saved my life.
Yeah.
Which kind of turns this whole thing around. We're talking about desperation as a gift.
Exactly. And that's the first, beyond belief moment. All these stories are beyond belief. I mean, that's what makes them so fun to dive into.
Yeah.
And yet each of these characters are very believable because we can relate to them in some way. And so this week's character is this unnamed woman and her experience of desperation. But I've always viewed desperation as a negative thing. Up until this message, to be honest with you, until I'm writing this message. And then I was realizing that no, desperation is actually a gift, and that's what Jesus meets people in our desperation. And so it's not something to be avoided at all costs or ignored when we get there. It actually has great potential to get us started in a new direction. And the energy of desperation, the giving up, I think, and just seeking out the supernatural is what we need, really.
Yeah.
And this woman's brave enough to do it.
Yeah, I think I kind of thought the same way, like of desperation and a negative. And I feel like on teaching team, Kip and Pastor Sherry really helped us with that from a recovery perspective.
Exactly.
Of the gift of desperation.
Yeah, and I found a book that was written by a heroin addict turned author, and he was the one that coined the phrase, the gift of desperation, or he just stole it from the recovery materials, probably. And the way he framed it, along with Jessica Legrone, who is the dean of the chapel at Asbury Theological Seminary. So she has a book, and it's called The Miracles of Jesus, and it's about, or Inside the Miracles of Jesus, and she talks about desperation as a gift. And this woman has run out of options, and we've all been there. So desperation comes when we don't have any more options that are the normal ones.
Yeah, all the normal options are gone.
The sane options have left the building, so it's time to do something that is beyond belief for a result that's beyond belief.
You say more about like how that's become a misconception, especially for Christians, about we have this misconception around weakness and helplessness.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm like this, and you probably are too. We want to appear strong, and we've got it together, and we have the answers that we need, and we're not afraid, and things are going great, and that's good. But the reality is sometimes we bump into our weakness, and that's where Jesus seems to want to rest his power, is in those places of weakness. And so I'm discovering the places that I'm self-reliant to the point of cutting Jesus out, then that is probably a bigger warning sign than desperation. And I used to view desperation as the weak state of being,
Yeah.
And actually it's flipped on its head, because it's when I'm not desperate that I'm probably in more danger, because I'm relying totally on myself and my own wisdom and those kind of things. And so I think that's a pretty good posture to remain in. And the challenge of this that I didn't have much time to unpack at the end is not only to get desperate, but to stay in that desperate place. Like, I think that's a posture that we need to maintain, because that desperation can move from an agony into, I would say, a delight almost, to know that we're cared for by Jesus, and he can meet us in those places that we don't have enough and we are weak. But our culture resists that. I mean,
but that's how desperation becomes the spiritual catalyst that you talk about.
that's right.
Like in my desperation, I meet Jesus, and Jesus can do something with that.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
One of the things you said about this woman's story is that God's power moves us from chaos to focus. What'd that look like for the woman, and what can that look like for us?
Yes, our story is told in Mark chapter 5, and it is actually a miracle that's sandwiched between another unfolding miracle. And so what's happening is chaotic. The scenes, both of the scenes are chaotic. The first one is a synagogue leader has discovered that his daughter has fallen ill. And so he comes to Jesus, humbles himself to get this renegade rabbi to come to his house to help heal his daughter from a sickness. Well, along the way, as they start to move there, this woman interrupts, and we learn that the girl that Jesus was on his way to heal was 12 years old. This woman has been suffering for 12 years.
Yeah.
Jessica Legrone builds a case in her book that this is to signal also the healing of the 12 tribes of Israel. I mean,
Okay.
that's well, she's smart. What can we say? Yeah, she's
I'll take
a
it.
great theologian. And so that's a fascinating picture to see that we have these really three miracles together, and that Jesus has come to bring, in the little girl's case, her back to life because she dies as Jesus is making his way toward the house. And so this 12-year-old, this woman who suffered for 12 years, all of us really around the world, the 12 tribes of Israel, but really all of people suffer from this moment of desperation. And so inside this miracle, we find that there's a lot of parallels in there, that the chaos is what is surrounding the girl, because when they arrive at the house, it's chaotic. The people are wailing and there's mourning. And the woman who interrupts Jesus on his way, she is experiencing a crowd, and they're all pressing in on Jesus. They're trying to follow him, and she reaches out and touches him. And I think this is a sign of focus, because Jesus has to quiet the room when he gets to the house of the little girl after she's died. He basically kicks everybody out, and then he raises her from the dead. And so there's this return to calm that Jesus brings. And in the midst of the chaos, he sees through the crowds, and he's looking particularly for this woman. He wants to know not only what happened, the power went out of him, Mark says, but he wants to know who it is.
Yeah.
So he takes a very personalized approach to this. And so in the midst of just chaotic scenes, what this woman brings, that desperation I think brings to all of us, is focus. It's like, I have to do something. I've clearly got an issue. Or a challenge, or I've got to pray about this relationship, or I've got to reapproach how I do my finances. I mean, this applies to every area of life. But when we get to that point of desperation, I find that Jesus is able to work with us the most, because then my will is not in the way. Yeah. Because it's all, I'm like, help. And Jesus is like, oh, good, I hoped you would ask. Yeah. Your girls have probably done this. I remember Caleb, when we put together train sets or Hot Wheel sets or those kind of things, every now and then he'd be like, I can do this myself. And he would give it a good run, but then he'd find some problem he couldn't solve. Yeah. And I would just kind of sit back and kind of wait,
Call me when you need me.
Let me know when you're ready. And he would try and try and try and try. And finally he'd say, can you help me? And I was like, oh, I've been waiting for that. And I wonder if that's the same posture that when Jesus had towards us.
When you step into that with Caleb, you're bringing it into focus, what the real problem is and what we can do about it.
Right. Yeah.
That's good. Second was that God's power moves us from isolation to belonging. And this was the part of the text that, at least at Central, preached the best. Oh, yeah. Like this woman been called everything. Yeah. Jesus called her daughter.
And that was, I don't think anybody saw that one coming.
No,
because she was terrified because she doesn't really know much about Jesus. She's heard that he can heal, and then she experienced his healing power. So this dude is beyond belief, and so she falls to her knees out of fear and identifies, I'm the one that touched your robe. And then I think she was waiting for the condemnation or the cursing or to be called unclean.
How dare you touch me?
Yeah, because she was breaking all the rules because she was out of options that were sane. And so here we go. And so she cut through the crowd. She had the focus. I got to get to Jesus. And she did. And then Jesus wants to know more. He wants to meet her as a person and surprise her not with name calling, but by calling her daughter. And it's the only time that word is used from the lips of Jesus in the four biographies. So it makes it even more special. And the cool thing is we don't know this woman's name that her parents gave her, but we know that Jesus called her daughter. And so that's a pretty good way to go down in history.
Yeah, that's the name worth being remembered by.
Yeah.
So it's this idea of rejection and shame and social exclusion over against the healing power of belonging.
Yeah.
Can you say more
and
about
part
belonging?
of this healing is what we have when we find one another in healthy relationships, when we can be together. Because I think the greatest illness today, according to Mother Teresa, is loneliness. It's the greatest disease of our time, and I think all of us want to feel seen, wanted, and loved. All of us want to know that I can be who I really am, and still be fully loved.
Yeah.
Those two things at the same time, because there's a brokenness inside of me that says I've got to hide parts of me that may not seem as impressive or something like that. I don't really know the whole root cause of it, except that that's my default is to go into hiding, and then that removes me from community, and then it removes me from the healing of that community. And you know, loneliness can cure when that is cured. Then a lot of other symptoms can be healed as well.
It's the idea of not just being healed from something, but being restored
To something, yeah.
Yeah.
And she is in that instant being restored back to the family of God,
Yeah.
which she had been excluded from. She's brought back into probably family and relationships and all those things that for a dozen years, she had been experiencing a living death. And that's where you put this story up against the story of the little girl that died, and she was experiencing death. So these deaths come in different ways, and that's the metaphor that Mark, I think, has tried to build upon.
Yeah, because she wasn't just experiencing the medical issue.
Yeah.
Like you said in the message, and I know we said at the other campuses too, like with all the cleanliness, the ritual cleanliness laws, like if she was married, she hasn't been with her husband in 12 years.
Nope.
If she's got kids, she hasn't hugged him in 12 years. Like
The tragedy of that is probably, I mean, it's one thing to suffer physically, and she was.
Right.
And she was probably in pain. She was probably weak all the time. She had run out of money. Mark includes this thing that Dr. Luke does not include, that the doctors made her worse, which I think is a funny
ironic
little
the
dig.
doctor left that out.
Yeah.
Don't blame the doctors.
Yeah, don't blame the doctors. We're doing the best we can. But I think the pain of that isolation and scorn and rejection would have been so hard to deal with on top of the physical stuff.
Yeah, it's great, good stuff. The final move was from fear to peace. What's the invitation there?
Well, so Jesus says to her these amazing words, "Go in peace," which is, we learned when we were preparing this, that the phrase in Greek would better be expressed in our language to say, "Go now into a life of peace."
Yeah.
So it's not just a one-time healing.
Not just this moment.
No, she's invited to enter into a life that is healed and an ongoing healing. And with that, he says, your suffering is over, and that's the celebration moment. That's the ring the bell moment.
Yeah.
That the suffering is over. So I was trying to build a case about there's a difference between pain and suffering, and if we can slice those apart, sometimes we have a pain of an issue or a broken relationship or a stress or a struggle or something, but then the way we handle that can either add suffering to the pain, or it can alleviate some of the pain.
Yeah.
And so I'm discovering that Jesus invites us into a life that's not free from pain, but it's free from suffering and the mental anguish and the social anguish and the personal anguish that can go with some of our broken conditions that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, it's not just about the absence of pain. It's an invitation to wholeness.
Yeah,
the
wholeness,
well-rounded-
and that's where I think the joy of this moment of a woman healed and restored to community, and her she got her life back. I mean, she was dead, and now she's basically alive. And the little girl, really put these two stories together, and they both complement one another.
Yeah.
because she's raised from the dead into to new life.
Yeah, you want to say more about the miracle on the way to the miracle, the sandwich? I mean, that was one of the cutting room floor things. Like, we didn't get to spend a whole lot of time on that.
Yeah. I wish we could have taken it all apart, but so it's how do you say his name? Jairus or Jairus?
Yeah.
Jairus. He's a leader of the Jewish synagogue, so this would have been a very respected guy, and Jesus was not well, he wasn't accepted yet.
Yeah.
In the he was doing his preaching out most of the time out with regular folks, and sometimes not even in the synagogues, and he was breaking the rules. And so this leader had to humble himself because he's concerned about his daughter. Again, there's that term. He says, my daughter is sick. So here's a man who's seeing his girl as his daughter, and then Jesus is going to call this woman his daughter. And so there's a commonality in this whole thing as well.
Yeah.
And so when he makes his way to the house, she's actually passed away. The 12-year-old has, and so Jesus has to calm everybody down. I mean, we've both been to scenes of a tragic loss before, and nothing worse than the loss of a kid. And in that time and place, just like now. I mean, that's your hopes and dreams. That's everything. That you would do anything for your child. And so this guy's helpless, but Jesus changes the course of history for them.
Yeah.
To I think not only bless her and bless this woman, which he does, and heal them, but this is a bigger signal, a bigger sign that Mark is sharing with us about Jesus' identity and what he brings to us. And there's where the number 12, may have some broader implications to us, because that's the same healing he wants to bring to us.
Yeah.
And in those dead places where we feel the most desperate, he wants to take that and turn it into life again. So those two stories, I encourage everybody to read Mark 5.
Yeah.
Just read the whole chapter.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, beyond belief set of stories. And Mark is quick to the point, man. He doesn't waste any words.
Yeah. So Mark's my favorite gospel because it doesn't waste any words. He's right. He's right
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
And read Mark 5, but also if you missed this message, go back and listen to the whole thing. But if somebody's listening today and they're feeling that desperation about something and trying to see that as a gift, what would you say to them about offering that desperation to Jesus? How do they go about doing that?
Well, I think the image of a parent and a child, a loving parent with their child, when your child says, "I need help me, mommy, help me, daddy," then that's a call to action, and it's a place where the child might feel vulnerable and desperate, but the parent has got it. They're going to step in, and so I think God would approach us that way in our desperation. And so the good thing is, in our desperation, which I like to try to avoid at all costs, and I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to mention it, and I don't want to feel it, and I don't want to all those things because it feels ugly and it feels like this is what I try to avoid is that moment of desperation. But actually, Jesus can step in, and that moment doesn't have to be an ugly thing that we hate. It can actually become a gift because that desperation can cause us to throw up our hands and say, okay, I need help. And when we do that, a parent will reach down, a good parent will, and help us. And I think that's what Jesus is doing in these stories. And it's no accident that we've got the daughter of a religious leader, and we've got a woman that Jesus calls daughter. Because, again, we're children of God, persons of worth. That's who we are. That's our fundamental identity. And so in that moment of desperation, I would say admit it to God and to yourself, and to let it rip in prayer. Like say, God, I need your help. I mean, he answers foxhole prayers when we're desperate. And the key, though, in that moment, because it's not our will anymore. It's not our ego. I heard in recovery that ego is edging God out, EGO. Okay. And the other day, last Friday at my recovery meeting, somebody said, I've had to learn that my ego is not my amigo. Correct.
So many good phrases.
They can turn a phrase, and they're all memorable. And so it's helped me to have those things to kind of go to that, okay, my ego is now out of the way. This is actually a good thing. Yeah. Because new possibilities can open up. Things I never thought would happen.
That's good.
New joy that I might not have experienced otherwise. But it takes that moment of desperation that can lead to a moment of trust and faith in Jesus. And that's what this woman is commended for. That's why she goes down in history, that she reaches out to touch the hem of his robe. It's her faith that's made her well. It's her faith that opened the door to Jesus' power. Yeah. And so that's when it's a hard place to get to, but when we're there, we can actually rest in it and embrace the feeling of desperation. And it actually is going to be a good place. Like I think God's kind of, when I get to that point, he's like, well, Wes, I've been waiting for this. For months, or years, or decades.
Just like with the train set.
It's just like that, isn't it?
I'm here.
I know. That's why God gave his kids, I think. He's like, now you get it, right?
Now you get it.
Yeah.
Well, this has been good. Hope this conversation's been helpful to you. whatever you're walking through in this season, we want you to know that you are wanted and seen and loved by God and by us. And we hope you'll join us for the rest of this message series as we keep marching toward Easter.
Yeah. And we have like a fellowship of desperation here.
Yeah.
Like we've got a bunch of us that come together, seeking God together, and God answers that prayer.
Yeah. Amen. All right. We'll see you next time. God bless. Have a great weekend.
Care.